Hello and welcome to Asia News Today, our quick whip around from around the region. Please subscribe to the channel and if you get a chance, click the like button below. Now today, COVID cases are still surging in many Asian countries. The US is rallying support from the region to support sanctions on Russia in the wake of yesterday's incursion into eastern Ukraine. The Australian PM responds to the Chinese laser targeting of one of its military planes last week and a conference in Indonesia to address regional human trafficking. All that and more coming up in today's Asia News Today. Now, starting off today with a quick COVID roundup in the context that whilst much of the rest of the world is now moving on from Omicron surges that peaked in early January to early February, much of Asia is still on the rise with numbers well in excess of any COVID waves in the past. Singapore has reported over 26,000 new COVID infections yesterday, 301 of them imported cases. 4 more people have died in the island state, whilst 1,608 patients remain in hospital. Another Southeast Asian country seeing surging infection numbers is Indonesia, which recorded 57,491 new infections over the past 24 hours. There were also 257 COVID-related deaths in the archipelago. South Korean cases are still surging, nearly hitting the 100,000 case mark over the past 24 hours. Vietnam too has hit a new high today with 55,879 new infections. Malaysia is also showing an uptick with 27,179 today and still on the rise. Brunei, with a tiny population of only 460,000, has already registered its highest number of cases in the past 24 hours with 3,251. Now, Hong Kong, the list continues, is also undergoing a big surge with 6,211 cases announced today. Now, Japan has a reported 55,903 new COVID infections, although the trend there is now, at least, in a downward direction. The US administration is in talks with allies in Asia to garner their support for sanctions and export bans against Russia as the initial international response mounts over Russian troops kicking off a quasi-invasion in eastern Ukraine yesterday. Washington has so far received positive support from Singapore, Japan and Taiwan for its plans to restrict exports into Russia. The 3 Asian countries are major producers of semiconductors and other high-end technology that Russia has been dependent on for the past decade. The Foreign Direct Product Rule, as the policy is known, extends US jurisdiction over products made with US software and technology, even if those products are made abroad by foreign companies without other ties to the United States. If implemented, it would cause a ripple effect reaching deep into the Russian economy, in a way traditional sanctions have not in the past, impacting Russia's oil and gas sectors, defence and civil aviation industries, and even the import of cars, smartphones and consumer electronics. The latest in the tit-for-tat response to an Australian plane being laser targeted by a Chinese Navy vessel last Thursday. The Australian PM, Scott Morrison, says the Australian surveillance plane was just doing its job when it was, as he said, put under threat with a laser from a Chinese Navy ship. Beijing responded to the incident, saying that the surveillance plane came too close and was regarded as a potential threat. Australia's Defence Department claims the aircraft dropped sono buoys, which can help detect submarines, following the laser incident, and that the surveillance devices were not a shipping hazard. The Australian PM said the surveillance planes had every right to be in Australia's exclusive economic zone to keep a close eye on what people are up to. The Chinese responded, saying Australia had used reconnaissance planes to take provocative actions against China on many occasions.
You love the Thaiger. Now subscribe to our new YouTube lifestyle channel, Bounce.
Thailand's food, travel, challenges, and just about anything that isn't news. Only on Bounce. Link in the description below.
Stock markets across Asia were a sea of red yesterday, while oil prices hit 7-year highs as Russia continues their incursion in the eastern parts of Ukraine. As the West now kicks off sanctions, even higher energy and commodity prices are expected, and more hawkish monetary policy measures which will likely disrupt the global economic recovery from the COVID pandemic. Brent crude oil futures jumped to a high of $97.40 US a barrel for their highest since 2014, and natural gas was up nearly 7%. Singapore Airlines and dairy farms shed 2.4% each, and Yangjiang Shipbuilding lost 2.8% of its stock price. Hong Kong was the biggest casualty in the region, with a 2.7% drop on fears of a new wave of regulatory scrutiny, and Shanghai stocks were down nearly 1%. Japan's market lost 1.7%, while Taiwan and South Korea each shed 1.3%. The Philippines has signed a US $624 million deal to purchase 32 Black Hawk helicopters. It's the largest military aircraft purchase under the outgoing president, Rodrigo Duterte. The deal was signed with the Polish-based aerospace manufacturer PZL Milek to acquire the S-70 Black Hawks, which can be used for troop transport, combat operations and disaster response. The deal includes training for pilots and maintenance crews and logistics backup. As part of efforts to resume a more normalised economy, Vietnam has reopened air routes to 20 countries and regions, compared to 28 in the 2019 winter flight schedule pre-COVID. The resumed routes include flights to Australia, China, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, France, Germany, Russia and US. Hopefully there's a flight to serve you. Hong Kong is constructing 4 temporary community isolation and treatment facilities, or mobile cabin hospitals, for its rising number of COVID patients requiring medical treatment. Around 14,000 to 17,000 isolation beds will be available when these facilities come online. Since the 5th wave of the pandemic started in December, there's been 145 deaths in the territory, almost 60% of the total over the past 2 years. Indonesia's foreign minister called for close cooperation for dealing with human trafficking while leading an international meeting in Paris last Monday. The Australian and New Zealand FMs served as co-chairs, and the meeting was also attended by senior officials from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the International Organisation for Migration. According to the Foreign Ministry, the steps to be taken will hopefully strengthen regional efforts to thwart human smuggling, human trafficking and other transnational crimes. The Indonesian Foreign Minister noted that the pandemic had raised the risk of human smuggling and trafficking, particularly the exploitation of women and children. She reiterated the significance of involving the business sector in helping ensure transparent supply chains, ethical recruitment and fair compensation for workers, particularly in view of the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on migrant workers. Well, thank you for joining us on the program as we wrap up the things happening around Asia. Of course, we'd like you to subscribe to the channel, click the like button or the dislike button if you choose, and we'll be back with another Asia News Today tomorrow.